In the last lesson, we looked at how to read and write to files using redirects and also pass data through commands with the pipe syntax. But what if we want to issue multiple bash commands at once and they don't necessarily have any data transferring through to them? To start off with an example, let's discuss those hidden locations dot and double dot that I mentioned in an earlier lesson. And we saw those with the ls-a command, where we have this dot and double dot location. In Unix systems, you'll find this dot and double dot location in every directory. The first of these, the single dot, literally means here. It means this folder. And to prove that, we're going to call open on the dot location. And we'll see what our operating system does for us. And we see that since I'm on Mac and dot is a folder, it is a folder on this operating system, Mac opens it up in the Finder application and it shows this location. And so far for this lesson, I've just got the lesson notes file and that's fine. Now the double dot is the previous folder. So we would expect a similar reaction if we were to call open on double dot. We would expect this projects folder to be opened by the operating system, since the double dot is also just a folder somewhere on the system. And it's opened in the other window, but it's right here. Try that again for the effect. There we go. So let's say we wanted to design a command where we could quickly open up the desktop folder. Perhaps your downloads go there and you want to quickly get to them in the GUI from wherever you are on the terminal. One of the easiest ways to do this is to just chain a few commands together. We can cd into the desktop directory and then use the open dot command we saw, which would open Finder or whatever GUI is on your Unix-like system that you're using. And so there's two ways when data or input isn't involved to chain commands together. The first is simply separating each command with a semicolon. So let's try that now. We saw from the very first lesson that the standard root for my user here is users Chris, and my desktop is just called desktop. So to get such a functionality, we would cd to that directory. That's the first command, and then we would issue open dot and semicolon for ending the second command. So let's fire that off now. And we see that it was opened. I don't have anything on my desktop right now, so it's empty, but you see it is the desktop folder here. Now, the one problem with the semicolon method is that if this command were to fail, this one would fire off anyway. It doesn't really care or know about this command because the semicolon really means separate commands. To have these commands act as more of a logical chain that follow one another, we should use a logical operator. And in the case of doing them in series, that is waiting for the first and then going on to the next, the logical operator we want to use is the and. If you have multiple commands that you want to run in parallel, you can call them all and chain them with just a single and bash will fire off all those commands at the same time. But typically, unless you're doing some sort of complex task, the and symbol is the one you want. So let's try that method as well, just to make sure it works. I want to go to the desktop. And we want to open. And we see that works as well. So this method with the logical operator works as well. But you might have noticed from either method here, there's a weird kind of side effect. And that is that we literally do move to the desktop folder while issuing that. Even though the final command is open, we're still calling cd, and in this shell, we are moving to that directory. And so for a full complete command that would not affect the current location of where we are, we want to cd back into the directory we were issuing the command from. And so first off, I'm going to move back into that projects folder. So going into projects and bash commands and scripting course. So we can copy this. We need to add one last command. That is, with cd, there's a nice feature in bash that when there's a dash, that means the previous location. So in this case, no matter where we are, we're only changing directory once, and that's to the desktop. We're issuing open, and then we're issuing change to previous. That's exactly what this command cd dash means. So we'll give that a shot. That's great. We can see that the desktop folder was opened, and we moved back into our original location. So there's no side effects anymore from that command. And just to check, let's move back to the root. We're in this users Chris folder, and we can issue this once again. It's great. It opens the folder, and we're still in the root. We haven't moved into the desktop. So in this lesson, we learned how to chain commands together when input or output really isn't the question, and the task is actually just the commands themselves to follow. We saw how there's two methods to do this. You can simply issue multiple commands in a chain and separate them with a semicolon. But we discussed how with this method, if one of the commands fails, the other commands will continue on, which depending on what you're doing or what command you'd like to write, that may have unintended side effects. So we ultimately resulted in using the logical AND operator, in which commands follow sequentially only if every subsequent command in the chain is successful. And this leads to typically a more predictable behavior. But obviously there's a point here where while we're in the terminal, we don't want to be writing or copying and pasting this entire command every single time we want to open the desktop, for example, or really any other complex task. So in the next lesson, we'll learn about creating what are known as aliases, and then how we can save these aliases in our bash profile so we can access them at our fingertips at any moment.